Hey everyone, my name is Riley and welcome to or back to my channel. So with the end of February, come and gone, I'm going to be doing a February wrap up. This will just be everything that I read in the month of February, and I'm so excited to share everything I've been reading. So without further ado, grab some coffee, grab some water, and let's get started. So I'm just going to be looking through my book journal here. If you have not seen the video where I take you along on how I make my book journal, I'll have it up in the cards so you can go click on it and watch that video. It was a lot of fun. Alright, so the first book I read this month was Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. So I absolutely adored this book, 5 out of 5 stars. This book had gripped me so much and I never felt so wishy-washy on whether I liked the character or not. And I think that Colleen has that power to write a book like that. There was times where I wish that, she could see her child, and there were times where it's yeah, but she did something kind of very terrible, and you can see the understanding of, where the grandparents were coming from. And that's not spoiling anything, I promise. But yeah, I was very didn't know what to feel. I really wanted the ending to happen how it happened, so I'm very glad for that. Absolutely, that was the best thing to ever happen. That was really what I was wishing for. This book really focused less on the romance, I would say, and more on the plot that was happening. And so I've only read one book like that from Colleen, which is Verity. So honestly, I really enjoyed this because it's very different from all of her books, and I've never felt so indecisive about, characters before. The second book I read was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. So I read the first Harry Potter book back in June, and I for some reason just never carried on. I had the entire series, but I went ahead and I wanted to finish the series. And so I picked up the second book, which is Chamber of Secrets, and I gave that 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. What I liked about this book is that it really kept me guessing on what was going to happen. I had seen the movies, but it had been a couple of months, so I kind of forgot. And so I was just kind of back and forth on what to think. Even though J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series is definitely a middle grade read, it feels not like it at all. It still feels very mature to read it, and it definitely keeps you still guessing. Even as an adult reading this book, it definitely kept me enthralled, and it still made me really excited to read it. So I really enjoyed this book. So the next book I read was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and I gave that 4 out of 5 stars. In my notes here I said, it is good but not as good as number 2. So the book I just mentioned. But I really did enjoy the going back in time aspect. I do remember that. I really enjoyed that. It kind of felt interesting to see how everything came together. So I read that book, and the next book is, I took a break from the Harry Potter series, and I read A Kingdom of Mischief and Memories, and this is by Shelby Corin. I actually found her on TikTok, and I know that she was a self-published author, and so I really wanted to read her book, and I got gifted her book, and so it was really good. It reminded me a lot of the Blood and Ash series, but I feel she could have done a lot better with the world building or the character development. I think she could have redone a couple of scenes to make it so much I don't know, more enticing, or could be more of a plot twist. But honestly, it was a really good book, and I did enjoy the aspect of the book. I thought it was really interesting. I did give it 3 out of 5 stars, but I'm very interested to see the books that she writes in the future, because I know this was her first novel and it was self-published, so I'm excited the other books that she plans to release in the future. The next book I read was A Head Full of Ghosts, and I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars, and it's by Paul Tremblay. This was a scary book, and I had really high hopes for it, because on the cover I had this is really scary and I'm very hard to scare, which is a direct quote from Stephen King. So I was man, I'm so ready. I can't wait to be scared, because I love paranormal and scary movies and stuff like that. I find it really interesting, and it was good. I think the first part 1, I think there was 3 parts, but part 1 definitely was the scariest to me, but I didn't think it was too scary by the end of it. And so I don't know how I feel. I'm kind of indifferent whether I think Marjorie was possessed or schizophrenic. So I'm kind of like debating on those two. And those are not spoilers either. They're both on the back of the book. So I don't know. I'm just kind of like, what do I think? What do I think? I don't know. I can't make up my mind. If you were to ask me, I think I'm leaning towards the schizophrenic side more than the possessed side. So the next book I read was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And I was really excited for this book too because I kind of love like the mystery aspect of it. And I rated it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I liked it and it had a good meaning, but it was a very predictable towards the end of it. That's all I kind of really wrote, is that, you know, it did have a good meaning in the end, but, you know, it was kind of very predictable. But I do like the way that, you know, Matt writes. I never read a book by him, so I am happy that I read his book. And I know he has a lot of like very well-known and beloved books, so I'm excited to see like the books I read from him in the future. So the next book I read was The Devil and the Heiress, which is the second book in the Gilded Age Heiresses series. If you've been on my channel, you know that I love the first one in the series. It's The Heiress Gets a Duke. So I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. The first book I gave 5 out of 5 stars, and it's in my The Only Books I've Given 5 Stars video, which I'll also link up here so you can watch that one. And this book follows the sister of the main character of the first book, which I originally didn't know. I guess I didn't read the back too thoroughly. I just kind of grabbed it because I knew I was going to like it because it was part of the series, and I seriously really enjoyed the first book. But I did really enjoy the fact that it was the sister, because you kind of got like references to like the first book about, you know, with the sister and the duke. So I definitely recommend to read this in order for no spoilers. But I did enjoy this. It was definitely not the book I thought was going to happen in a good way. Like I thought when I read it, or when I very vaguely read the back, I kind of pictured it going one way in my mind, and it definitely went the other way. And I am very grateful for that because it was definitely a really good book and I really had a hard time putting it down. And I know the third book was just released on the 22nd of February, so I definitely plan to be picking that up ASAP. So I went back to the Harry Potter series, and the next book I read was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars because I really enjoyed how there's different schools coming together for this one, and like the ending and how, you know, kind of alluded to something bigger than just like problems at the school, which has kind of been like what you've been reading the past 3 books. And this one at the end really integrated like, wow, like this is getting a lot more serious, which I really liked. I don't know, I just really loved the tournaments and the ball scene. I just really enjoyed this book, and I also had a really hard time putting it down, so that's why I gave it 5 out of 5. The last book I read this series was Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. The reason why I gave it 4 out of 5 is that, you know, I loved the entire book for sure, absolutely. The only thing I didn't like was the end fight, because you know how at every Harry Potter ending of the book, if you haven't read it, I'm not going to spoil it, there's like a big fight, and I didn't necessarily like how the fight went down. It felt very immature for a very mature situation, even though it does deal with like, you know, early teens kind of thing. The only other thing I kind of felt like about was that Harry was so much like angrier in this book compared to the other books. So that kind of was like, what the heck kind of dude. It kind of is like a conspiracy about like why you may think that, which I'm not gonna again get into because I don't want to spoil it for other people. But yeah, I gave that 4 out of 5 stars. So that is all the books I read in the month of February. I read 9 books, which is pretty on average for me. I read 9 to 10 books each month. So yeah, I definitely plan on finishing the Harry Potter series like right now, very early March, because it's very good. But that's kind of the only plans I have for right now. If you want to see the books that I have been planning on reading, you can go watch my like TBR video. There's a ton of books in there that I plan to be reading, and I will be uploading a books I plan to read on vacation, so those are also kind of on my TBR because I have you know, spring break and the warm weather coming up. So you can kind of get an insight on what I plan to be reading in the month of March. If you haven't followed me on any of my socials, definitely do. I love to be friends. I love to hang out and talk to people. Goodreads is definitely like my favorite social media. If you can even count it as that, it's the one I'm on the most, surprisingly enough. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day or night, whatever time you're watching this video, and I'll see you in the future. Bye.